unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
Do you think you're a fair person? You know? Do you cut slack? Or do you go on the attack when somebody's being attacked? When you argue, are you arguing to win? Or are you arguing to understand and find agreement? You know, try to get closer to reality. You know, how often do you operate in good faith, and how often do you operate in bad faith? How often are you good, and how often are you evil? Not me, I'm never evil. I'm good always. I'm always fair. I one of the reasons why I don't get along with people very much is really about that, about fairness. I don't see people as being very fair. You know, I see people covering their asses, lying to make themselves look good. They get all up in their egos, say things that aren't true, kick people when they're down, which of course is the most convenient time to kick somebody. You know, if you kick them when they're up, you got to be pretty good at that. Good old roundhouse, that takes some practice. But when their face is right next to your foot, it's a good time to kick somebody. Stooping down to help them up. Ugh, my back, you know. I'm a very rigid person. I'm not talking about just my personality, which is pretty rigid, but my literal joints, I'm not in good shape. Anyway, I just, you know, look, I'm repetitive here. I got to keep bringing up topics that are in the public eye because, you know, that's what we're all talking about, right? You see a story, I see a story. I give my spin on the story, you have your spin on the story. But anyway, I just, YouTube recommended to me to watch this documentary, very low-grade documentary about somebody who claims that South Park ruined Kanye West, that it was, you know, South Park that did it. You know, I'm 57 years old, soon to be 58. I missed the whole Kanye thing. It just was never my thing. I got things secondhand, you know, the big events, the things that I simply couldn't miss. But, you know, I wasn't watching MTV, wasn't searching out hip-hop or whatever. So largely everything I know from Kanye West is gossip shit. It's not really his art or his music. It's always the controversial things. And I never tracked that through to go into a deep dive. You know, I would maybe look up a video, go, let's see what this is all about, but in one ear, out the other, because it didn't appeal to me. Like the aesthetics of Kanye West don't grab me. You know, the music doesn't move me. The lyrics don't move me. The sound of it, the aesthetics, it just doesn't move me. That doesn't mean that, you know, I doubt the people who find it very emotional or whatever. But anyway, so the interesting thing is it's also true with South Park. It's like I can respect South Park. I can laugh at it and go, okay, that's cool. And I've seen many episodes, you know, because I'll watch it and laugh and, you know, high five to Trey Parker or Matt Stone or whatever. But I never sought it out. I won't ever do a binge watch of it. In fact, when South Park comes on, I almost begrudgingly watch it, which isn't to say I don't enjoy it. I do. It can be very funny. But I don't know what it is. it just, I don't know. I guess it kind of requires effort for me to enjoy it. Like maybe I don't know what it is, but certain things you just enjoy. There's no effort. You just sit there and enjoy it. Other things kind of require your attention. You got to think about things and not be fully engaged, or maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a debate in my mind that's happening when I'm watching a judgment. For me, good art lets me let go of all that stuff. I'm not sitting there and having to argue or philosophize with a piece of art, you know? And I think maybe that's what South Park does to me, you know? I can't just enjoy it. There's too much stuff there that requires my analysis and attention. But anyway, this little documentary made by a guy who has the furthest thing from, I don't know, a narrator's voice or professional presentation. He makes this documentary, and apparently there was this South Park episode that ultimately made a joke called fish sticks. And the joke is basically that fish sticks sounds like fish dicks. And the joke spreads around the world. Cartman claims credit for it, but really it was a paraplegic. Anyway, it gets aimed at Kanye West. Kanye West doesn't understand the joke. He doesn't get that fish sticks and fish dicks are the same term, you know? So he can't figure out why people are calling him a gay fish because he likes putting fish sticks in his mouth. And the whole world mocks him because he doesn't get the joke. Anyway, so anybody that's been watching Kanye West at all over the last however long time might come up with the conclusion that he kind of deserves the jabs, that he doesn't get jokes, that he's kind of bombastic, you know, his ego takes control or whatever. So he's a perfect target for that, you know. But, you know, I've said this a lot of times. When somebody's attacked, when I see somebody being attacked relentlessly by a group of people, when I see people virtue signaling, there's really very few things that are more unsettling to me than the mob and self-righteousness, and then the mob being self-righteous and the self-righteousness of the mob. There's really nothing more unsettling than a self-righteous mob with pitchforks running towards an individual. I don't care who the individual is. They could be the, air quotes, most powerful person in the world. I still see any most powerful person in the world as a fragile little sack of meat who bleeds, you know, and has pain or whatever. I don't much fall for the characterization of that person is a powerful, pure evil, whatever. That's just not how I see things, you know? So I obviously end up defending some really controversial figures that get attacked ruthlessly by the population. Anyway, so this documentary, this guy, first of all, the premise of the downfall of Kanye West, you know, as if Kanye has fallen down and there has been a downfall. That characterization of Kanye is already, it's just like, okay, well, that's one premise. But there's another premise that could be that Kanye has escaped He's escaped. He's escaped the prison into which he admitted himself years ago. Fame, all the trappings. That's the way he represents it, on his Twitter things. Side note, I just had the inclination to disclaim Kanye. No, I don't stand behind. I don't support. I had that twinge of almost doing it. Glad I didn't, because that to me is so weak. That is such a weak thing to disclaim something, to go, I don't agree with Kanye, but let me, it's just like, you don't need to do that, people. Nobody needs to do that. You don't need to disclaim Hitler. You don't need to disclaim Jesus. You don't need to disclaim the devil. You don't need to. You don't need to. It's not your business that other people will try to attach you with whatever they want to attach you with. Anyway, back to fairness. This is all part of it. So this thing goes on. This long little, well, not long documentary. It's probably a half an hour long, and this little. The premise of the documentary and the premise of the South Park episode is that Kanye's humorless, he's not self-aware, and he doesn't get the joke because he makes it about himself. Because of his ego, he can't figure out that the joke, the fish sticks joke, is not a Kanye joke. It's a universal joke about anybody who misunderstands, or a person that assumes that a fish stick is a fish stick and not a fish dick. He makes it about himself. You might be able to guess where this thing is going, but this guy makes this documentary, and by the end, he's talking about the downfall of Kanye West and how he aligned himself with Donald Trump and how he put on the red hat and how he started criticizing the Jews in his life that he might have seen were responsible for certain downfalls, maybe you might call them, And so this guy, by the end of his documentary, is making all these claims and essentially ironically, he turns his documentary about Kanye into a virtue signal for him. And that's what it is, because he's taking the position that Nazis are bad, Hitler's bad, Kanye's bad, Donald Trump is bad, hatred is bad, And I guess there's a South Park episode out there right now that kind of also takes this opportunity to jab Kanye for all this stuff too. There's not, in this downfall, there's not one mention of any of the aspects of Kanye that make him a human being and that can be understandable. Marriage is hard. Fame has to be hard. Losing your mother is hard. Being famous and having all your friends want a piece of you is hard. Making mistakes is hard. Having your friends all turn their backs on you when you make that mistake, that is hard, that hurts. Kanye actually explains these things, hurt people, Not one point in this documentary does this guy mention the Kardashians and their history. They don't mention Harley Pasternak, who drugged him up. They don't mention that they medicated him. They dragged him in because he decided to wear a red hat. They don't mention any of that. They don't mention any of the terrible, terrible things. Whether you like Kanye or not, these glaring facts like, wait, somebody he wore a Donald Donald Trump hat, and you're saying that he needs to go into a hospital? That's the reaction? He needs to go into a hospital. They don't mention that when that part of his life came up and Kim Kardashian was divorcing him because of his Trump support, that he doubled and tripled down on the God thing and Jesus thing by doing Sunday services. Like, did they consider that that was a man who loves his children, who wants to prove that he's not the devil people are saying they are? So he decides to do Sunday services and take it across the country. To me, from an outsider, I just go, well, that's a person that's trying to show the world that he's not the horrible human that many people are trying to make him out to be. You got to look up this Harley Pasternak. I think that's his name. His alleged trainer, who threatens Kanye. Kanye, you got to read the text messages. Kanye, you're going to do things one of two ways. You're either going to agree with me, and we're going to do things peacefully, or I'm going to have you committed. I'm going to drug you up so much that your kids won't recognize you. It's the most evil text message I've ever seen, right? But none of the Kanye haters ever want to bring that up. They don't want to bring up the fact that here's a man, a human being who has children and apparently loves them. And a group of people, including the Kardashians, are conspiring to keep his children from him. They're using his children, and this happens all over the place, not just with Kanye, but with fathers all across the country and all across the globe, where their children are used by outside forces who aren't related to them. Governments, judges, lawyers, as pawns to get these men to comply, to do things, to trick them, to actually drive a lot of them crazy. Many of them commit suicide, because their children are being used by the system as pawns. Do things our way or you'll never see your children again. This is a common thing, okay? It's not just Kanye. This is common. My mom did it to my dad. If you are a child of divorce, you've seen it happen, probably. This little manipulation. Do things my way, or else you won't see your children again. Or else I'll start whispering in your children's ears. I'll start manipulating your children to not love you. This happens all over the place. And when I was watching Kanye's, air quotes, downfall, this is what I was seeing. I was seeing a man being absolutely brutally tortured and manipulated using his own children. So when I saw him coming through and doing the Sunday sermons, I thought, oh yeah, this is the right way to do it, Kanye. This is great. And I watched them every Sunday, and I was quite inspired by them. That was the only time where I really, I don't know, I don't know if you could even say I was subject to Kanye's art, because he really wasn't doing Kanye songs. It was more of a Sunday sermon where people would get together, choirs would sing church music. And most of the church music wasn't Kanye's church music. But, in hindsight, you can see that I'm not going to, I can't guess what Kanye's intentions were with that, but at the time I felt like they were pure, and, but I could also see the undercurrent of this is a way that Kanye can at least get to see his kids. How is Kim Kardashian and the Hollywood mob going to make a strong case that Kanye can't take his kids to church with him? You know what I mean? So That's the way I was looking at it kind of at the time. And now, as time goes by, I see it more. Time goes by, he loses that fight. He does this Sunday sermon. That doesn't work. The Kardashians still manipulate him and keep his children from him. And all of his Hollywood friends, because he starts saying, well, this person's doing this, and here they're Jewish and blah, blah, blah. He's identifying the people that are hurting him, and he's trying to hurt them back. But for some reason, the whole world, because he says they're Jewish, because he uses that racial identifier, everything else goes out the window. None of his pain matters anymore. None of his pain matters anymore to them. Oh, you said Jew. You said Jew. Therefore, all bets are off. Now you are Hitler. And you see this person who is Kanye West, who's this kind of oppositional kind of a guy, not wanting to just bow down. He wants to fight. That's his nature, to fight. That's why people loved him. That's why his fans loved him, is because he fought through things. That's why he inspired people. So you're dealing with a guy like that, but now you're asking him to just surrender, knowing he's not going to. He decides not to take the drugs. Great. Not the, but then he starts promoting nitrous oxide, and that's sad looking. Aligns himself with Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a guy that I once championed, and I've made recordings like this defending Milo too, because of how they attacked him, and then how Milo. The thing is this, this is why I ask when people are you fair? Because can you at least see the forces that are acting upon a person? Can you be fair? It's easy to be fair with maybe somebody that's right in front of your face. But when it's a controversial figure, and maybe that person is really rich and, has access and privileges that you don't think you have, that's the real test of fairness. And you hear people saying, I don't give a fuck. He's fucking rich. I'm not going to pity him. He's got all the money in the world. He dug his own grave. And it's like, okay, so you don't want to be fair because the person's rich. And that means all bets are off. Money means that you don't have to be kind to somebody. That person has a lot of money, so you don't have to be nice to them or fair to them or see them as a human being anymore. I see the same thing happening with Donald Trump, Elon Musk, you name the big person, and Kathy Griffin, even on the lefties side, I see people just not being fair. Can you be fair? Can you look at this person as a human being, and analyze their life through the lens? Can you empathize? Can you go see things from their point of view? I don't think it's that hard. In fact, I think people, I don't know, I've never been in anybody else's body, but it's very easy for me. Never at any point do I see people as not being people. I might say shit like that sometimes just to get in a zinger, But the reality is I see people as people, fragile human beings with needs and wants and loves and desires. And anyway, back to the documentary. This guy sums up this whole thing and does this big, long virtue signal, completely ignoring all the really dark, dramatic details of Kanye's life and what happened to him, and just the horror that comes from divorce and separation and lawyers, and when the state gets involved in guns and drugs and doctors, and just, to me, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. One flew over the cuckoo's nest. That's a nightmare. That's a nightmare when the state has the power to lock you up and drug you. And they did that. That's not fiction. That happened. Kanye was saying things I didn't like, so they injected him with drugs to chemically alter his reality, his perception of reality, obviously. Just evil, evil shit. So now that he's on, I'm bouncing around, I know. I've got ADHD. Maybe I should be on drugs so I can concentrate. Anyway, a lot of terrible things have happened to that guy. And so now when I see his Twitter feed, and it is such a display of pain and lashing out and desperation. To me, I see a man who's trying to be killed. You know, I see a man who's trying. He even says it. I'm not some kind of, he's the one saying this. You people don't dare to kill me. I dare you to kill me. I want to be killed. You know? He's literally saying this, and I see almost zero empathy or sympathy or whatever fucking apathy. Whatever, pathy. It's just people almost in a weird, gleeful way lurking, just wanting to see the destruction, just wanting to see the carnage. You know, there's him going with some former porn star or whatever, his wife, Bianca, you know, who's being naked here, whatever. I don't know what their thing is, but she's got to be in some sort of pain too, watching him do this. You know, this self-destruct mode. It's almost like suicide by cop in real time. But the exact wrong people are using the wrong methods to deal with Kanye, in my opinion. They are trying to deliver him back to his oppressors. You know, go back to the hospital, get back on drugs, get in line, get in line. Everybody seems to be pressuring him to just get back in line. Apologize to the Jews, and maybe you can see your children again. Some fucking dark shit. I mean, this guy, this documentarian guy that I watched, he went out of his way and spent weeks, if not months, making this documentary, making every edit, making the decisions that he made, not to understand Kanye, not to explore the pain that he's in and the pain that his family's in. His children are obviously experiencing pain. Kim Kardashian is probably experiencing some pain too. I'm not saying it's easy for her. I'm not trying to paint her as a bad person. There's a lot of pressure that she's under. Imagine the phone call she's receiving. Keep your kids away from Kanye. Keep your kids away from Kanye. Don't imagine the pressures being applied to her. She's probably just a weaker person than Kanye. So the pressure is working with her. She's doing as she's told. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not there. But that's what I'm talking about, fairness. It's not so simple as to just go, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. You know? Harley. Let's talk. Am I fair about Harley Pasternak or whatever the fuck his name is? The evil doctor that sent the most evil texts I've ever seen. You know? What are the pressures in his life? You know? What leverage do people have over him? What pain is he dealing with? I don't know. I don't even know if fairness is important, you know? I don't think you want a guy like me out on a battlefield, because I sit here and wring my hands about decisions. I'm a guy that would look at the guy I'm supposed to shoot and see the glint of hope in his eyes that he lives and doesn't die. I think about his family. Look, I'm telling you, that's just the way my brain works. The first deer I shot when I was 14 years old, I had the adrenaline to shoot it, and when I shot it and got it, I was like, wow, really excited. But then as I got close and I saw the little deer in his little eyes, and I had to gut it and let his guts spill out onto the mountainside. In my mind, I'm just thinking, oh shit, what about his kids? What about his girlfriend? I anthropomorphized him and thought about him going back to his cave, because deers live in cave in this fantasy. And his kids are like, where's dad? I didn't cry, but I was just really like, oh man. That's what I kind of do. I kind of look at, it's just hard for me to look at a living human being and not project my own life onto them, not see myself in their situation and go, well, there's more to that story. There's more to the story. So that's what I mean. Is like this guy does his I mean, it's one thing to make a documentary to defend somebody and to bring humanity into the picture, to help people understand the human condition. It's another to kick a man when he's down. And that's what this documentary was. This guy spent months and months and months. I don't know how many months. Long time. At the end, he says he spent a long time making the thing, thanking his Patreon subscribers and blah, blah, blah. He does this whole virtue signal at the end, too. But he does this to kick a man when he's down. The downfall of Kanye West, he's glorifying it. He's gleefully bathing in the downfall. Not at any point in the thing was he saying, we need to understand Kanye. This is a man that's clearly had some injustices heaped upon him. It's just not right that he's had his children ripped away from him. It's not right that somebody's trying to keep his children. It's not right that his friends are trying to put his kids on their albums. It's not right that people are going around him, the father of his family, to get permission from the mother and ignore him, the people that he was supposed to be friends with. Think about this in your life. If that happened to you in your life, how devastating that would be. To have your children ripped from you, and then have people who said that you were friends going behind your back, getting access to your kids that you don't have access to. Can you imagine seeing your child with makeup on in somebody else's rock video that you know them, and they didn't go through you, they just went through the mom, they went behind your back? The amount of betrayal on just a personal regular. Think about it if it happened to you, not famous. Just think about. Oh, I just can't. It's hard for me to understand how people can't or won't see these details. To me, it makes sense that he's on nitrous. It makes sense that he's lashing out, talking about how porn is so great, and everybody's all, oh, how dare you? You were doing the Jesus thing before. I mean, even from a biblical perspective, you can understand it's a kind of a Job story. It's like, I did everything your way, God. I tried. I did the Sunday services. I did, but still, I still can't see my kids. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. You're just punishing me more and more and more and more. And then you can see how somebody would lash out against God. You know, how they would go, no, you, what do you want from me? Now I'm going full bore the other way. I'm Satan now. To me, I just go, that makes sense to me. I can understand how pain makes people react, you know, especially when it's an oppositional person like Kanye. Anyway, I'm kind of doing this right now. You know, I'm using Kanye as an example to express how I think the world should be. And that's just another piece of evidence of the pressure. Now you could always say, oh, he got himself into it. That's part of the bargain. Yeah, but if you see somebody that's made a bad bargain, do you just see it through? Do you just watch them? Do you just sit by and go, enjoy it when the consequences are visited upon them? You know, do you just go, okay, let's just watch you burn now. You're the one that lit that fire. I'm just going to watch you burn. There's a fire extinguisher sitting 3 feet away from you, but like, why aren't you reaching for the fire extinguisher? You know? Anyway, back to this documentary. I keep starting to get to the point that he was making, but you know, when I watched it finished, I made a comment. I said, you have unironically embodied the accusation that you place on Kanye that he didn't get the fish sticks joke because he tried to make it about him. You made this presentation. And now you have used his life to make it about you. Because this documentary isn't about Kanye and it's not about South Park. It's about you advertising that you don't like Hitler. And you love the Jews. And you don't have any hatred in your heart. You just have love and joy for everybody, which is why you're taking this cudgel and beating Kanye over the head. Because you're full of love. Smash, smash, smash. I'm smashing his brain into a pulp because I'm filled with love. He should have never wore that Donald Trump hat. Smash, smash. You know? Made a whole documentary. The documentary is not about you, about Kanye, sir. This documentary is not about South Park, sir. This documentary is about you and your virtue signal. Why? Is it because your voice is a terrible voice? Is it because you're pudgy? Is it because you don't leave your room? Is it because you don't have friends? And you have those view counts going up, and maybe this is your chance to, if I hop on the Kanye bandwagon and smash him, will people think that I'm good now? Will I be the shining star? Will I find love because I'm beating the shit out of Kanye? Will the comment section under my YouTube video be like, high five, I'm glad you said it. Yeah, fuck Kanye, that anti-Semitic Nazi. He's a piece of shit. I can't believe it. It's so great how he was mocked by, he totally doesn't get it. You know, everybody, the mob, just virtue signaling mob. And that's a sad story too. That's the point I'm trying to make. You know, this documentarian spent months of his life making this thing to attack Kanye. What's missing in his life? Maybe he's gone through a divorce. Maybe he's making this virtue signal. If I attack Kanye, maybe they'll let me see my kids. Look, Your Honor, I just made a video attacking Kanye West, the modern Nazi of our day. Can I please see my children? Look, honey, I just made a video attacking Kanye West. Can I get 30 minutes with my kid this weekend? You know? It's just, to me, it's all about fairness. Can you just look a little deeper into these stories? I don't know how to stop it. I don't know if you can stop it. You know? I kind of want to. It's that fire extinguisher thing, you know? If the fire extinguisher's there and the fire is going, do you just let it burn? Do you break out the hot dogs? The marshmallows? You know? And cook them? As a human being burns, goes down in flames, do you enjoy it? You know? Do you bask in the glow of somebody else's fire? Or do you reach for the fire extinguisher? I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. You know? Well, I do, actually. Well, not even. I mean, even when I just thought, I had a flash. What if it's a person that, you know, raped your sister or your daughter? Even then, I kind of feel like justice requires a quick bullet through the head, you know? But not torturing his family with it, you know, like a secret, quick, put them out of their misery thing. They disappear. They're no longer anybody's problem. You took care of the problem, but not this big, long, I don't know. Public executions? No. Secret disappearing? Yeah. That's my preference, you know. I make big shows about dragging people through the streets, and you know, you sometimes you got to take a Ceausescu and drag them through the streets. Well, you don't have to do it. Somebody else is going to do it anyway. The mob isn't always bad, you know. As much as I just made a thing about the mob. Well, let me think about that. I think the mob probably always is bad, but life is tricky, you know? Fire, good, bad. Ice, good, bad. Every single thing is useful for good or for evil, including you, dear listener. You know, every time you make a decision, you're either choosing something good or something bad. You know, even to a very degree, you know, some things are just, it's neither good nor bad. Oh, really? It's just a little nudge. Hard to be right down the middle, neutral. It's either kind of good or kind of bad. Kind of fair or not fair. Good faith or not good faith. You're either virtue signaling or you're helping. You know? You're either fanning the flames or you're getting out the fire extinguisher and helping to put it out. You're either kicking somebody when they're down or you're stooping down to lift them back up and get their side of the story and maybe set them straight and help them, you know, deal with the pain that's led them to that point. I get it. I'm not the guy you want on the battlefield. I'm not. Because I pause. I don't pull the trigger when I'm supposed to. I wait. I get blown through the head in my hesitation. Okay? I go, I don't know, that guy doesn't look like such a threat. Blam! I'm dead. Blood just spurting out of my neck. Anyway, things for you to think about. Thanks for listening.